Hey guys, so I want to talk about the spinal cord, and I'm going to focus on the internal anatomy of the spinal cord rather than the external anatomy. So this is okay. So first of all, we should know that as you descend through the spinal cord, the amount of grey matter increases. So this is the white matter, and this is the grey matter. And the grey matter increases as you descend. So if we compare an upper cervical segment with the sacral segment, we can see that there is a lot more grey matter than there is white matter in the lower regions. Okay, in the sacral. So grey matter increases as you descend through the spinal cord, and this is because there are more structures, there are more muscles as you descend, which need to be innervated. Okay, so you need more grey matter because there are more cell bodies. Okay, so I'm going to use a thoracic cross section, and then I will probably move on to a cervical, but don't worry, we'll get there when we get there. So this is a thoracic cross section of the spinal cord, so we should know by now that this is the grey matter and this is the white matter. And we should know that this is the dorsal horn, and we should know this is the ventral horn. Dorsal, sensory information entering the spinal cord, information on things like pain, temperature, touch, proprioception, all enter through the dorsal horn. And this here, if you can see it, this is called the substantia gelatinosa. The substantia gelatinosa is where fibers carrying pain and temperature synapse. And the substantia gelatinosa is present in all segments of the spinal cord, and it forms a cap on the dorsal horn. So this is the substantia gelatinosa. This here, you can just about see it here. This is called the Sears tract, or the dorsolateral tract, and this is the route through which these fibers enter the dorsal horn. Okay, so they enter through the Sears tract and they synapse on substantia gelatinosa. So substantia gelatinosa is associated with pain, pain and temperature, the pathways involved in pain and temperature, and we'll do more on those in another video. But just very quickly, they will synapse in substantia gelatinosa, and then a second order neuron crosses the midline and it ascends in the spinothalamic tract. So this is the anterior route. We've done the dorsal horn. This here is the lateral horn right here. The lateral horn is only present between T1 and L2 because the lateral horn contains the cell bodies of the preganglionics of the sympathetic neurons. And we know that the sympathetic outflow from the spinal cord is between T1 and L2, so we would expect to see the lateral horn between T1 and L2. This region here, medial to the lateral horn, there is another nucleus here, and this is called Clark's nucleus. Clark's nucleus is also found between T1 and L2, and Clark's nucleus is involved in unconscious proprioception going to the cerebellum. So fibers carrying unconscious proprioception, these enter through the dorsal horn, they synapse in Clark's nucleus, and then they cross over into the white matter, and they form the dorsal spinocerebellar tract, which ascends and goes to the cerebellum. So lateral horn cell bodies of the preganglionic sympathetics. Clark's nucleus is associated with unconscious proprioception going to the cerebellum. So Clark's nucleus, these neurons give rise to the dorsal spinocerebellar tract. This here then is the ventral horn, and as we said, this is motor efferent. It has the cell bodies of the motor neurons, and this is efferent, so information leaving the spinal cord. This here is the central canal, and the central canal contains the cerebrospinal fluid, and the cerebrospinal fluid of the spinal cord comes from the fourth ventricle. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say for the grey matter. So let's just recap what we said. This is the Sear's tract. This is the substantia gelatinosa. This is Clark's nucleus, and this is the lateral horn. These two are only found between T1 and L2. So they're found in the thoracic spinal cord and in the upper lumbar spinal cord. And then this is the ventral horn, and this is the central canal. So now I'm going to talk about the white matter. The white matter of the spinal cord is not just called white matter. It's called the it's subdivided into funiculi. So this is the dorsal funiculus. This is the lateral funiculus here, and this here is the ventral funiculus. So dorsal funiculus, lateral funiculus, ventral funiculus. And these all contain different ascending and descending tracts. There are some important ascending and descending tracts. So the dorsal funiculus, it contains the posterior column medial lemniscus tract, and this tract is carrying information on conscious proprioception to conscious proprioception, which will eventually end up in the cerebral cortex. It's carrying information on touch, and this will all end up in the this is all going to travel to the thalamus, and it's going to end up in the cerebral cortex, in the cerebrum. So conscious proprioception, and this tract is called the posterior column medial lemniscus tract or pathway. In the thoracic and the lower regions, the dorsal funiculus only contains the so I don't know how to say this without going into detail in terms of the posterior column medial lemniscus pathway, but like in the thoracic and the lower, so up until T7, the dorsal funiculus it consists of this tract called the gracial fasciculus. And the gracial fasciculus is where fibers carrying the conscious proprioception, they basically enter through the dorsal horn, and then they create the gracial fasciculus. Again, we'll do more on these tracts in more detail, but this is just some more detail. This is just some more information in terms of the dorsal column. So up until T7, the dorsal column consists of the gracial fasciculus. And the fibers are added from the medial, so like the fibers are added, like they're laminated from the medial side out to the lateral sides. So as you ascend, up until T7, fibers are added to the medial side. So like the legs or like the feet, fibers carrying the conscious proprioceptive information from the feet are added here. And then as you ascend, the fibers are then added until you reach T6. Once you reach T6, this here, the dorsal funiculus is then divided into two columns. So we still have the gracial fasciculus, but now fibers from the upper regions of the body, they are also added, and they create the cuneate fasciculus. So T6 and above, we have the gracial fasciculus, and we have the cuneate fasciculus, and both of these are in the dorsal funiculus. And below T6, we have the gracial fasciculus. Okay, the gracial fasciculus and the dorsal funiculus. But really, just remember dorsal funiculus here, conscious proprioception up to the thalamus, which will then end up in the cerebral cortex. This is the lateral funiculus. The lateral funiculus contains the dorsal spinocerebellar tract, carrying unconscious proprioceptive information to the cerebellum. It also has the spinothalamic tract, okay, which is kind of in this region. And it has the dorsal corticospinal tract. The anterior funiculus contains more pathways. It has the anterior or the ventral spinocerebellar tract here, and the ventral spinocerebellar tract does differ from the dorsal, and we'll cover the spinocerebellar tract another time. But the ventral funiculus contains the anterior spinocerebellar tract, and it also has the ventral corticospinal tract amongst other tracts. So let's recap what we've said. This is the Sears tract, substantia gelatinosa, dorsal horn. This is the lateral horn, only found between T1 and L2. Cell bodies of the preganglionic sympathetics. Clark's nucleus, which it's where the fibers carrying unconscious proprioceptive information synapse, which then give rise to the dorsal spinocerebellar tract, carrying unconscious proprioception to the cerebellum. Then this is the ventral horn. We said this is the central canal. We said this is the dorsal funiculus, which has two components, the gracial fasciculus and the cuneate fasciculus, and this contains fibers carrying conscious proprioception, amongst other sensory modalities, to the thalamus, which will end up in the cerebral cortex and the somatosensory cortex. And we said this is the lateral funiculus. The major tracts in the lateral funiculus are the dorsal spinocerebellar, the spinothalamic, and the dorsal corticospinal. And we said this is the anterior funiculus, and the major tracts here are the ventral spinocerebellar tract and the ventral corticospinal tract.